The city of Brașov, on Romania's Transylvania region, is steeped in history. Many bloody battles have been fought there, and it is perhaps best known for its callous warlord, Vlad Tepes, the real-life Dracula. In 2004, the town, which sits surrounded by the Carpathian Mountains, was under attack once more, but not from any vampires or warlords. That year, the people of Brașov were under threat from brown bears. They were once enticed to the region with helicopters lowering carcasses into the woods for the bears to eat, in an attempt to build their numbers for hunters to then go and shoot. Now, hunting requires strict permits, and it is otherwise illegal, allowing the bear numbers to soar. Romania has half the brown bears in the whole of Europe. The success of their population has been a conservationist's dream, but is practically a forest management's nightmare. There are too many to be sustained by the woodlands and mountains in Romania, and therein lies the problem. With their numbers on the rise, their natural food sources are dwindling. Tourists and locals are venturing into the forests to gather berries and other wild foods, which is putting more pressure on the bears. With nowhere else to go, the brown bears are turning to the towns and cities to secure their meals. In October 2004, one bear went on a rampage. It was a terrifying and deadly attack that put the entire city on red alert. People were told to remain indoors, to bolt their doors and windows, and not to venture out unless absolutely necessary. There was a killer on the loose, and the entire police force and the Army's special forces were deployed to the outskirts of Brașov to put an end to it. But for some, it was too late. The bears in the Carpathian Mountains were becoming accustomed to humans. In the seasons building up to the worst attack in the country's history, there were very clear warning signs that something terrible was about to happen, and no one could blame the bears. Desperately in search for food, the bears ventured into Brașov. They began raiding trash cans, destroying beehives, and scouring people's gardens in search for food. One lady even came downstairs after hearing a commotion inside her home to find a bear tucking into the contents of her fridge. But although many of the people were alarmed by this behavior, and senior officials warned people about the dangers of bears, some saw it as an opportunity. Taxi drivers started charging tourists 30 euros for a nighttime drive to go and see the bears wandering the neighborhood. Others deliberately left meat out for the bears, hoping to catch a glimpse of one up close. And in one shocking photograph that was widely circulated on social media, a man held one end of a steak in his mouth, whilst a bear chewed on the other half. It is no wonder that the bears began to associate people with food. In late October 2004, as the bears were preparing for their winter hibernation, they were piling on the last of the pounds and building up their fat reserves, ready for the first snowfall of the season. But knowing that people provided plenty of food, often with scraps and garbage to forage through, one bear in particular was drawn to the scent of cooking meat. A man was barbecuing some steaks in his garden. Surrounded by the woods, he had no idea that he was being watched. A curious bear ambled closer, sniffing the air. The scent of the meat drew it closer, and when it was just yards away from the man, he suddenly spotted it. There was no way he would get back inside the house in time before the bear reached him. Instead, he stood his ground as the bear advanced. The steaks were sizzling in a burning hot griddle pan, and the man lifted them off the barbecue, ready to throw them at the bear if it made an attempt to strike. As he waved the pan in front of the bear suddenly swiped with its paw. But instead of securing the meat, it struck the pan. The bear leapt backwards, its paw badly burnt, and ran back into the woods. Crashing and charging through the trees, the enraged bear thundered along one of the woodland paths. It had been severely spooked, and the pain in its paw was causing it to act out. Along the same path, just a quarter of a mile away, was a group of hikers. They were out for an enjoyable walk amongst nature, intending to pick wild mushrooms that were emerging through the leaf litter on the forest floor. When they heard the snapping of twigs and scuffling of feet on the ground, they turned around to see the huge brown bear thundering towards them, its enormous frame intimidating as it galloped at speed. Despite all 8 people standing tall, huddled together, the bear was not deterred. Driven on by the pain in its paw, the enraged bear leapt at the hiking party. Screams and shouts rang out through the woodland as the bear savaged them. It swiped at them with its powerful paws, its long, sharp, curved claws ripping through clothing, skin, and muscle as each person fell victim to the ferocious attack. Being thrown to the ground, the bear jumped on top of them. It bit into their heads, faces, necks, and shoulders, its canines delivering catastrophic injuries and fatal bites. One member of the group managed to call for help, and an ambulance sped to the scene. As it raced up the woodland track, the paramedics could see the attack taking place just yards ahead. But as the ambulance approached, the bear still was not deterred. It ran at the vehicle. It launched itself at the doors, trying to rip them open and get to the people inside. Moments later, the bear fled into the woodland. It was like something out of a horror movie, and people began to wonder if the bear had rabies. It was overly bold and brazen. Its attack on the people had been fearless and relentless. One person, who was rushed to the hospital, was barely breathing. Although he made it all the way to the emergency room, he later died. Doctors were shocked by the severity of the attack, and as the ambulances brought more and more people in from the countryside, they realized just how serious things had been. 5 people were admitted to hospital in a critical condition, but it wasn't over yet. Instead of retreating deep into the forest, the bear continued its rampage. It ran towards the edge of the forest and came across 3 friends who were also out enjoying the countryside that fateful day. The bear began another frenzied attack, knocking them to the ground and mauling them. The weight of the bear pinned them down to the forest floor as it straddled them, pushing down on their chests with its forelegs. It then repeatedly bit into them, ripping and tearing. Although they tried to cover their heads and curl up into the fetal position to protect themselves, the raw power from the bear was too much and left one of them dead and the other 2 seriously injured. Following the attacks, Brașov Mayor George Scripcuru declared a state of emergency. People were ordered to remain indoors. The mayor scrambled a team of experts to try and capture the deadly bear. The entire police force of the city, local hunters, and workers from the city's animal control services were mobilized. Special forces also joined in the hunt, searching from the air to try and locate the animal. Others spread meat and molasses along a valley miles away from the city to try and lure any bears away from civilization. But with a bear's range consisting of more than 10 miles, there weren't any doubts that the bears would be back. The deadly attack sparked debate about the presence of the bears. The region relied on tourism for a large part of its economy, and having deadly bears in and around the city threatened to put an end to the thriving tourism industry. The hunting team eventually tracked down the bear responsible for the attacks. They found it in the parking lot of a local factory, cornered it, and shot it. Scientists tested it for rabies, but it came back clear. Its unusual and excessively aggressive behavior wasn't down to disease. Calls for a cull the following year were suggested to officials, and it was agreed that a maximum of 300 bears should be killed from Brașov's Carpathian Mountains. 300 bears culled due to the fear caused by 2 people's terrifying final affliction.